गुड मॉर्निंग, गुड इवनिंग, गुड आफ्टरनून. वेलकम टू लीडरशिप इनसाइट्स with me, Prashant. आप सबको मेरा प्यार भरा नमस्कार. As always, I would like to start by saying thank you to each and every one of you for the love that you're showing this show. And I also respect people who are reaching out to me with feedback of what we can do better. So thank you so much for that. Now, taking our journey forward and talking about different perspectives of leadership, today we have another special guest with us today who will help us understand the nuances of culture, and we'll also try to dig a little into the leadership and its impact on the culture of an organization. Let me introduce the guest to you. She is the Vice President and Global Head HR at Signex Datamatics. She has over 22 years of progressive experience in managing and leading various aspects of human resources spanning across high paced business domains of ITES. She holds a PhD in management and is a gold medalist in BBA as well as MBA. She has done HR and business strategy related executive management programs from Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, ISB Hyderabad, and XLRI. She has excelled in establishing innovative and competitive initiatives and institutionalizing a strong performance driven culture at Signex Datamatics. And this has resulted in the company being certified as a great place to work 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021. And not just that, she has been awarded among the Forbes India Top 100 Great People Manager study conducted by GMI India. She was awarded the CHRO of the Year 2017, 18, 19, and 20, Women Personality of the Year 2019 and 2018 by Femina, Business Person of the Year 2020, Most Influential Corporate Personality 2019, and these are just to name a few. She believes in driving organizational culture and values through people and not processes alone. So, without any further delay, let's welcome our today's guest with us, Dr. Ankita Singh. Hi, Dr. Ankita. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Prashant. Thank you so much for this lovely introduction. Really happy to be around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Ankita. Now, to start the conversation, the expectation that I had set in yesterday's introduction video that was that we'll majorly talk about the culture of an organization. And the thought initiated, I would say, triggered in me was when I read your article, and it was very interesting. And the thought that was driving the entire article was that no culture will last forever and fit the bill perfectly. Now, this statement was something that triggered a lot of thoughts in my mind, and I wanted to know from the author कि जिसने लिखा है, what was that person thinking? Why did you write this, and what do you mean by this? So, can we start our conversation with that?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Prashant. I think we are every day, we talk about organization, we talk about processes, we talk about what we would be doing, but the core remains as, people. So we are every day interacting with people. And when we talk about people, we interact more with the emotional side, their requirements, their environment, what they expect from the organization, how they can deliver, why there are variations. And culture is nothing but what we build for them in the system where they can comfortably exist as their self and contribute to the goal that we have defined for organization and the individual. So when we talk about culture, I used to hear a lot from people, you should join that company because culture is great. um, Whenever you will talk about Tata, everybody would say culture is really great. I am not contradicting that. Obviously, it has a great culture, but is it same for each individual? I mean, is everybody saying the same thing? Probably for few organizations where the foundation is very strong, values, core values are very strong, few people may say, or maybe most of the people may say. But in my viewpoint, I would say that culture changes every single day. Uh, and not everybody in a system can claim that this is a set of culture or this is the culture of my organization. And that's the reason that statement that at pace with which things are changing every day, when we are talking about people emotion, everything around us is changing. How can we then claim that the byproduct of the same remains constant? So when purpose is changing, when processes are changing, when people and their requirement are changing, obviously the culture has to evolve with every passing day, and that's the core of it.
Bilkul. I get what you're trying to say, and if I look at it like an equation, if the input is variable and if it's changing, then the output cannot remain constant, right? कि अगर आप जो
Absolutely.
चीजें डाल रहे हैं, it's like, if you're cooking food, if you're putting different ingredients in that every single day, and the way you're preparing is changing, the person who's preparing is changing, then obviously you won't find वो राजमा दाल जो है वो हर दिन अलग अलग बनेगी. It might still be called that,
Absolutely.
but it would taste
Absolutely.
differently.
So
And
that's why, Prashant, the curry and the ingredient statement was there, right? Because you're not preparing the curry every single day. You
बिल्कुल
cannot get the same output because ingredients are changing every single day.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. And I can relate back to, I think, we spoke about this in the pre-show conversation as well, that I remember that I worked for organizations that have amazing culture, and the perception outside to the world is that they're a great organization to work with, great culture. But I also remember those conversations that happen in the cab, same organization, 15, 20 people sitting in the cab, coming together every day in the morning and in the evening. And you see that everybody in that cab has a very different perception of an organization. There's somebody who's extremely happy and very excited about being here. There's somebody who is extremely sad about being this organization. Somebody is saying, "Yaar, when will I leave this? When will I quit this organization? I'm having a
Yeah.
terrible time here." And there is somebody who's somewhere in the middle and doesn't know where he is going. And then there is someone who has just recently joined, is very excited कि मैंने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ज्वाइन की है, और वो बंदा कंफ्यूज होकर बैठा है कि उसको समझ नहीं आ रहा कि हो क्या रहा है, किसकी सुनूं मैं, कोई खुश है कोई दुखी है.
Yeah.
So I think
Absolutely.
that's a testament of what you were saying, that within the same organization there are so many cultures that are actually getting built, department wise, team wise, function wise,
True.
जो शायद एक स्टैंडर्ड नहीं है पूरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का. I think that's a point that you're trying to
Absolutely.
make.
And I would just want to add to it that we discussed, I think, on that day as well. That sometimes, our perception is that culture is defined by the organization. A holistic approach is always there
Hmm.
attached to it. Wherein, for a lot of people, like you were giving cab example, for a lot of people, individual can define the culture for them, right? We spoke about that,
Hmm.
where a manager who treats his or her employee differently. So one person comes and says that, uh, you know, extend my maternity leave for 6 more months. And if manager says, yeah, don't worry, extend it. Once you're back, we will have a better role for you in the system. So don't worry. Just be
Hmm.
relaxed, focus on your family. For that individual, the manager has created the entire culture. Anybody who
Absolutely.
would check how's the organization, that individual will say, oh, amazing culture, you should join the organization. But let's not forget the point that that individual logically is talking only about his or her manager. And wherein a person who comes and says that I want to go to Goa, for 2 days, and I just want leave, and that manager, same manager, would say you are needed here, maybe you can postpone your trip. Same individual during coffee break may say it's not worth working for this organization,
बिल्कुल,
because
absolutely,
people, they just don't give priorities to our preferences. So
absolutely.
again, same individual defining the culture on the basis of what manager role. So culture is a very vast term. Probably
Mm,
we try and put it in a very simpler term, saying that if a company has great value system, it will automatically have great culture,
mm,
wherein it varies because of individuals and every process that exists in the system.
बिल्कुल. And when you speak about values, Dr. Ankita, what importance or significance do you think values play when we talk about such variety and such dynamism in the culture, and how the perception of a single person can actually be the culture for that person, for that organization? What significance do you think values of organization play in this?
I think values would remain the core or the most important aspect of culture. That will be the foundation or the pillars of driving or creating a great culture in the organization. So you cannot change your base. Like we were talking about dish, koi bhi recipe ho, if you are, as you talked about rajma, so I'll take that example. अब वो राजमा
I
में
love
राजमा
Rajma.
तो गायब
That's
नहीं
why.
कर सकते. You have to have rajma, otherwise the entire dish would change. So
बिल्कुल.
similarly for culture, there has to be a mix which has to remain as is, if at all you want to define a culture, great culture for your organization. So वो foundational pillars जो होते हैं, that I would say is core a value set that
Hmm.
has to remain intact when you talk about being authentic, when you talk about being transparent, true to self and the organization and the employee. So the those core values remain, and that will always remain as the
Hmm.
strongest part of the culture. Rest, depending on the need of the market, people, your internal system, your goals, you keep adding sometimes kuch thoda zyada, kuch thoda kam.
Hmm. बिल्कुल, वेरी वेल सेड, बट यू सेड वेरी राइटली, कि अगर आपको राजमा बनानी है, राजमा कैन नॉट बी मिसिंग फ्रॉम द डिश, राइट?
Yeah,
You can have anything else, you can change and mix and match whatever you feel like, but that basic ingredient has to be there. So values play
absolutely.
a role of that basic ingredient, that is the foundation of building that organization. So uh, a very interesting comment that's come our way, I'll put it on the screen. Shivani says, culture is like glue for the organization. However, it's the quality of that glue which decides whether the glue will bind people or divide them, leading to conflicts. So that's
So
that's a
true.
very interesting take on it.
Absolutely. Very
Kuldeep
unique
says,
insight.
culture is defined by individuals. Great thinking. So this is very interesting, because whenever I speak about culture to people, or when I read about culture to people, it's spoken about in a very generalized manner. That culture is defined by values, and like it holds good for everything and anything that happens in this organization. Now, as much as that might be the intent of keeping those value systems in place, keeping that vision mission in place, so that there is commonality in the entire organization, लेकिन the truth on the ground, जैसा आपने कहा, the reality on the ground is that every individual defines the culture of the organization based on the experience they have with that organization, and then they spread that message about how this culture of organization is based on their experiences in that organization. So that makes it very individual in nature. और
True.
जो आपने पहले पॉइंट कहा, when you gave an example of the manager who one team member wanted a leave because of maternity, another one wanted leave for the Goa trip. So this manager, so as leader, it's very important for us to understand that we have to live by the values of the organization. And if every leader realizes that every individual that I'm interacting with cannot just assume कि this is the culture of the organization and this is how things work there. I need to understand as a one to one कि उस बंदी की लाइफ में क्या चल रहा है, what is going on in his mind, my communication, my message to him, did he understand, why did I say what I said, why did you not get leave and why did the other person get it, did that conversation happen? I think वो individual level पे
Absolutely.
responsibility leadership की बन जाती है.
Inclusion is very important. Yeah.
Absolutely. So moving on, again digging deeper into the article that you've written, there are two very interesting acronyms that you've come up with. One for culture transformation, you talk about lead, and then you've also come up with an acronym for culture. So can we dig a little deep into it and understand, what is lead and what is that acronym for culture?
So, lead, we said, it's very simple to say that this is an initiative and just go ahead and, paint the board and people will accept it. The second part to it, and which is more logical, is you train them. As I said, inclusion is really important. So, asking people, that's the first step. Talk about it. Once you have decided that you want to introduce something, when you want an individual to lead that initiative, you need to check with them as well as the other people, how do they feel. So asking people is really important. Second is talk about it. When you have already told them what you want to do, and you have already taken input that how do they feel about it, talk to them. It has to be more interactive, where they would also give inputs that no, this is not right, or this is not wrong, or probably this is not required at this point in time. Third, I
Hmm.
would say involving them is really important. In most of the organizations, whenever we talk about initiatives, we put it either on management or HR. ये तो
Hmm.
उनका काम है, हमें तो
Hmm.
सिर्फ फॉलो करना है. But to what an extent? I mean, if you have 10,000 people and if you have 35 HR people, how do you think they'll involve
Hmm.
everybody at every level? So
Hmm.
involving them, as in the people who are getting impacted, is really important. Make them the enablers. As I said, they have to be part of the process. They shouldn't be the people who are just following it. They should be the people who are running it as well.
Hmm.
um, Keep taking feedback. Never forget to ask how do they feel and if it's helping them or not, and stay open to change. So that's the crux of lead process, and that
Hmm.
we do in terms of training and, um, you know telling each individual that exists in our
mm,
organization, that this is
mm,
how every process,
mm,
including culture or the day to day of feel of the organization, has to be driven. A second part, the acronym of culture, that's very close to me as well, because that everything I agree. I read a book, Start With Why, and when I related it, actually that's the truth for every single thing that we do in our life, right?
mm,
So you start with conscious decision, as in why you want to make or break that culture that already exists in the system,
mm,
which is C, that's why. Second was U, which is unbiased. How you create a culture which is obviously not favoring somebody and not talking about one group or one team, or more importantly, it's not talking about what I want to do as a leader in the system, but more than
mm,
that, I focus on what is actually needed to be done in the system.
mm,
The third one, L, is linked, and which is where all it will change things in the system. And my goals, need of the people, need of the market, need of the process, are we able to connect the dots really well? So that
mm,
remains for L. Then T was timely. Sometimes, like talk about COVID, when there was a need where we all said, forget about work at this point in time, focus on your well being, focus on your health, focus on the
mm,
health of your family members.
mm,
Imagine we implementing the same thing now, when COVID is actually, one is gone, second is gone, third we are talking about, but implementing those things today, and we literally empathize with our employees and we tell them, at that time project was important, now you can take care of the family. So will that help? Not
mm,
really. So timely, or when you want to make those changes, when you want to tweak your
mm,
process a little bit, just to enhance or further strengthen your culture, that is really important. U is for unique, where I would say a lot of times, and which we covered in a way, we say that this is the culture of the organization, which probably is a myth. I mean, you cannot have one culture for 300 people. You have to understand what is needed. Like Goa and ML example that we took. Can you give 9 days or 3 months leave to both? And can you just simply say that no, Goa, we shouldn't be talking about it. 2 days, you better focus on work. So, what kind of training or what kind of system you have to have in place in your organization where people can relate and understand the need to say yes or no? And more than that, like you said, they talk about it, why it
mm,
was given there, why it is not given here. And
mm,
we understand that one individual may take it as is. Sometimes जब हम किसी को बोलते हैं नहीं ये नहीं होगा, and that
mm,
individual will go back and say कुछ तो reason होगा.
mm,
Second, you say नहीं ये नहीं होगा, there is a possibility that that individual may go back and say बात भी नहीं हुई, and how
mm,
can you just say नहीं होगा? So you have
mm,
to understand that each individual is unique and they have to be treated in that manner. R stands for realigned, where you have to get all your processes. You have a very great culture already in the system, but if at all there is a need, you are ready to just get those things together, make those changes, and again realign wherever it's needed. So, re is another, I would say, prefix that we all have started using post covid or during covid also, I would say. Reskilling, हर चीज में आपको री लगाना ही पड़ा.
relearning, reskilling, yes, yes.
True, because you realize that time is changing, people are
Mm,
changing, everything else, around us is changing. और हर चीज को हो सकती है जरूरत, बी 0.2%, but जरूरत पड़ सकती है, and you should remain open whenever there is a realignment required. You shouldn't be staying rigid that no, this is what has worked for us for last 15 years and
mm,
this will continue.
mm,
Both flexibility or nimbleness has to be there.
mm,
And E, which is the last component, it's engaging, where we spoke about experience, right? Sometimes it happens that we get the best of the things in our home as well, but not everybody in our home, even though they are well connected, they would like, because उनको लगेगा ये मेरे काम की नहीं है.
Hmm.
So and not everybody would engage, right? Like you get a video game अच्छे से अच्छा, and you think हर generation उसमें involve हो जाएगा, हर generation उसको enjoy करेगा. Probably that's not going to be the case. Now if you generalize कि millennials enjoy करेंगे and elderly people they will not even touch it, that generalized approach is also not fair. कई घरों
Hmm.
में उसका just opposite होता है,
बिल्कुल.
where millennials are not interested in being on Facebook, and wherein our parents, they are entire day spending time on WhatsApp and Facebook. So you cannot generalize because
बिल्कुल.
core characteristics may remain consistent, but there are a lot of variations at every level. So
Hmm.
the culture has to be engaging, where you have to take help of what unique processes and policies you have, how aligned you are to the system and to people, so that they understand. They don't talk about, like we discussed, they don't talk about culture of the company is okay or good. They are able to say that I really enjoy working with this organization, my team and my manager. Because
Hmm.
if each individual is able to say कि मेरा काम अच्छा है, my team is great, my manager listens to me, and we have a better clarity of where we are headed, I think the
Hmm.
culture of the organization is already set. So that's the acronym that I had put for culture.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. While I was listening to you, a few things that keep coming into my mind, that kept coming into my mind. One was awareness is very important. As an organization, as the leadership of the organization who's creating and developing the people of the organization, it's very important to be aware of yourself, of what actions, what behaviors are you showing every day, what is your level of engagement with your people on every single day. Is your approach very generalized in nature, or are you engaging with people at an individualistic manner? Another thing that you said, which was very interesting, was that managers need to listen. Now ये बोलने बोलने में तो लगता है कि ठीक है, managers need to listen, but if we see on ground, this is a very big challenge. That listening skills of managers are not right, which means that awareness of actually listening individually and understanding people, engaging with people every single day, understanding their why, of why are they there, what are they doing in this organization, what is working for them, what is not working for them. आई थिंक जो आपका जो हाईलाइट मुझे लगा, आपकी जो एक्रोनिम है ऑफ व्हाट इज द सोल ऑफ दैट, is engagement, is fluidity and flexibility, adaptability, and is awareness of being who you are and what are you creating for your people. अगर आपके नीचे आपकी लीडरशिप में 10 लोग हैं, what are you creating for those 10 people? What are you defining as culture for those 10 people? And then breaking it down to an individual कि ठीक है, my approach for 10 people is this, but that does not mean all of them are taking it in the same way. Do I understand one to one कि उनको क्या समझ में आ रहा है? What are they actually taking away from this? So that came out as a highlight for me. Now, the question that comes into my mind because of this is the importance of leadership. Now, since we understand and we've been speaking about कि एक छोटे 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 ट्राइब बन के एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का कल्चर बनता है, एंड एवरी ट्राइब, एवरी इंडिविजुअल माइट लुक एट इट वेरी डिफरेंटली. So what do you think is the responsibility of leaders of the organization in defining and then actually driving and sustaining the culture of an organization?
Uh, I would say role तो है, major role है, but I have always heard in most of our sessions or interactions that the entire responsibility of creating a culture is with the leadership, and the second in the layer comes the enabling functions like HR. Third would be the managers, and fourth, according to me, would be employees should be in that pyramid, but nobody talks about it. But
Hmm.
to answer your question, I would say leaders play a critical role, because whenever we initiate something, ये चीज होनी है या नहीं होनी है, how much I want to invest in that, how much I am open to change, and I understand the need, and I'll do whatever it takes to reach there. All these things, affirmations, will come from the leadership team. The
Hmm.
push or the pull that is needed to initiate these changes in the system or to create one, that will come from the leadership team. Now, that's the that's the topmost level, right, where we have constructed the framework that this is what we want to do and this is how we will do. So that responsibility, I would say 30% or 40% of the entire thing, because that's the major one. But the next or the remaining, when we uh, get into a process mode, implementation mode, I think it varies and it gets further distributed, maybe 20% with the enablers, another 20% with the managers, and this takes care of your approximately 80%. But still, I would say 70 to 80%, and remaining 30 to 20%, which most of the organizations or we as a process initiators we miss, it lies on employees as well.
Hmm.
Prashant, because sometimes we've heard it enough that if you want to see the change, you have to be part of the change, you have to be the change. But how much employees understand, or probably the pattern designed by us today is such जहाँ पे हम employees को उस तरह से train करते ही नहीं है that you
Hmm.
also play a role in creating culture.
Hmm.
पर अगर culture में problem है, have you given them enough space to say that this is the problem, ये सही नहीं है या ये होना चाहिए, and it will be much better for my team or at least for me individually. So if you have
Hmm.
given that platform and if employees are participating, then this would be the bifurcation. But just answering your question with respect to leadership team and leadership in general, it creates or it plays a very very vital role. I would give it the same comparison as value and culture. Similarly, the rest remains at one end, but one thing which has to be there in a consistent manner, that is the leadership team in the entire process.
बिल्कुल एंड हम चाहें या ना चाहें एज लीडर्स आई थिंक इट्स important for us to accept the fact that we are being judged all the time, and I can relate to it as a team member as well, that when I'm in office or when I was in office and when my leader used to walk, everybody used to, and I used to definitely look at, कि आज उनका mood कैसा है, if there is something that I want to reach out to him for, how does he seem right now, did he just come and talk to everybody, is he in a good mood, or did he just come, keep his bag, take his laptop and went, go into a meeting room. तो मेरे सब लोग ऑब्जर्व कर रहे होते हैं, बिकॉज सम एवरीबडी वांट्स टू कीप their leader very happy and be in the good books of their leader. So now it's very important that we understand as leaders, and and since I understood this as a leader, I was very aware of the fact that my team is observing me, which means I need to be consistent in my behavior. I need to make sure that there shouldn't be inconsistency in the way of how I am being every single day, because that will confuse my team. My team would not know how to relate with me, how to connect with me, because I am a very different person every single day. So, do you think for leaders now, for employees to be empowered, जिसे आप कह रहे हैं that employees are very important in building the culture of an organization, but I think there is lack of empowerment from the ground level leadership to actually empower their people and tell them, कि boss, you also have a role to play in it. You can also define things, but and I'm allowing that. When I say allowing that, I'm open to that. वो
Yeah.
openness कहीं ना छूट जाती है. I think a lot of leaders drive things the way they want to drive. I don't think they leave their employees open to actually drive things and push things. What do you think?
I agree. To an extent, I agree. But I'll just cover the first part first, Prashant. Like you said, that's the trend that has been set, and we have been following that. जैसे हम कितने conscious है कि manager ने आके क्या किया, and is it a good day to go and discuss about something? लीव के लिए है, नहीं आज रुक जाता हूँ, कल बात कर लूंगा.
Hmm.
अप्रेजल है तो नहीं नहीं, आज तो 2 लोग डांट खा चुके हैं, पॉइंट ही नहीं है, अदरवाइज
बिल्कुल.
रेटिंग 3 मिल जाएगी. So all those things, and because we have been trained that way, our mind has been trained that way. हमने मैनेजर्स की तो बहुत सारी ट्रेनिंग्स लेके उनको बताया है कि हाउ यू शुड ट्रीट योर पीपल, हाउ यू शुड बी न्यूट्रल, हाउ यू शुड बी अनबायस्ड, ऑल दोज थिंग्स, ट्रांसपेरेंट, सब चीज़, बहुत सारी ट्रेनिंग्स हैं. But now just go back to the reality and look at the numbers or the organizations where the investment is on juniors as well. कितने लोगों को
Hmm.
ये बताया जाता है कि मैनेजर इज ऑल्सो अ ह्यूमन बीइंग, राइट? उनके घर पे भी काफ़ी चीज़ें चल रही हैं, और अगर मूड में डिविएशन है और अगर उनका रिस्पॉन्स किसी दिन गलत है या किसी दिन ठीक नहीं है, यू कैन नॉट बी जनरलाइजिंग इट. Give
Hmm.
them the required space, because
Hmm.
that's what I mean when I say overall great culture. when every individual, no matter how junior, which would
Hmm.
include a fresher as well, जब वो
Hmm.
सिस्टम में इंडक्ट होते हैं तो उनको क्या बताया जाता है that what you are supposed to do, how you are
Hmm.
supposed to treat, how you're not supposed to generalize people and things that are happening around you. So
Hmm.
yes, that's where the gap is, and probably that is one issue because of which we are not able to talk about culture as a general thing, and
Hmm.
that gap will always remain,
Hmm.
because we are talking about humans, we are talking about emotions, we are talking about individuals. There will be variations. Nobody, like the first statement you mentioned, if we put a formula, practically impossible to put a formula against each
बिल्कुल,
individual कि आज इसको सुबह
बिल्कुल,
अच्छे से ग्रीट कर दिया, ये कर दिया तो उसका दिन अच्छा होगा. You don't know
बिल्कुल।
what's happening in the individual's life. So
हुँ,
that way, this gap will always remain, where we will lack investing, you know, throughout the organization, or capturing juniors, or the rest of the organization. But a lot of companies are doing that. They
हुँ,
have processes like we follow unique and equal. These are two processes where we talk purely about how you exist in the system, and how
हुँ,
it has to be unique, at the same time how it has to be equal. And equal is like empathetic, quick, unbiased, adaptable, and liberal. Now, it's not just for managers, it's not just for leaders, it's for each individual.
everyone.
When you are talking to your manager, you have to be empathetic. Kuch data manga hai, you have to be quick. If you are not able to work on it, if you need more time, if you don't know how to work on it, you have to go back and talk to him. You need to tell him कि मुझे support चाहिए, या मुझसे नहीं होगा, आप किसी और को दे दो. You have to
हुँ,
be unbiased. You can't be comparing two managers. उसका manager तो उसको हर दिन छुट्टी दे देता है. आपको पता ही नहीं कि उनके उनका format क्या है, उनका काम क्या है. You
हुँ,
need to be adaptable कि आपने 2 दिन की गोवा की लीव मांगी है, and if at all there is a urgent need, एक ML से आप अपने आप को नहीं compare कर सकते. So
हुँ,
to what extent are you also listening to what your manager is trying to say? And obviously liberal. So this is one thing which we have introduced, and it has helped us in
हुँ,
a very progressive and positive manner, where we have a more neutral system, where there's not a senior or a junior who is responsible
हुँ।
to run a culture or drive a culture. It's everybody, every individual.
That's a very wonderful perspective, Dr. Ankita, and I think much needed. And you're absolutely right in saying that there are a lot of conversations that happen about, the responsibility of culture is on the leadership for driving its leadership. Leadership needs to be aware, leadership needs to be compassionate, and all of this is true. But what does not get spoken about is on the other side of the equation that employees also need to be trained on how to be aware, compassionate, understanding, available for your leader as well, क्योंकि end of the day वो भी तो एक इंसान है, right? There might be more expectations from that person, from everybody, because of who he is and the role that he's playing. But end of the day, he or she is also a human being. They might be going through 100 things in their life. There might be reasons for the way they are, so don't judge them at every moment. And a very important point that you mentioned for employees to understand, and this skill I don't think is being brought up in employees in many ways. Employees are being taught a lot of things in terms of, how do you manage conflict, how do you build rapport with your team around, how do you communicate well. I understand these things are important, but the point that comes as a highlight from your conversation, which I think is very important, is a training for employees of how to understand your leaders as people first, how to be more compassionate towards your leaders, how to be more available for your leaders, and how to build that relationship, which is a human to human relationship with the leaders first, and not judge him or her based on what leadership you have experienced in the past, या आपकी बाजू वाली टीम वाला या दूसरा डिपार्टमेंट वाला या दूसरा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन वाला अपने लीडर के साथ एक्सपीरियंस कर रहा है, बिकॉज एवरी इंडिविजुअल इज डिफरेंट एंड ऑन देयर ओन जर्नी. So this is a very important
Yeah.
point. I don't think
I
it's happening in most of the places.
Yeah, I keep using, a mathematical equation, just on a lighter side. Whenever I talk to my team, और वो बोलते नहीं ये तो ऐसे होना चाहिए था. I always tell them that we may not remember the equations, but एक चीज हमें सबको याद है maths में, that there used to be a line in between, और नीचे हम लिखते थे LHS is equal to RHS, hence
RHS,
proved.
hence
ऊपर का
proved.
किसी को कुछ नहीं याद होगा, नीचे का सबको याद है. But the crux is, you have to have, वो hence proved लिखने के लिए, which is more
बिल्कुल,
of a neutral achievement of what you intend to get.
बिल्कुल.
LHS has to be equal to RHS. हर जगह नहीं. पर कहीं तो वो दोनों को पार्टिसिपेट करना पड़ेगा. एंड व्हेन आई से दोनों, whenever we talk about culture, there are two individuals or two systems, two processes who are, or which are in front of each other, and they all have to play their equal, or at least I would say a logical role to get
Absolutely.
that balance.
Absolutely. And I think today's workforce that I see millennials of, who are 20, 25, 30 today, I think they feel very empowered and they are open to all this. I think because they're coming into the very new way of leadership, I think these are people who are more open in communicating things. They are more open to understanding these things, which is a very positive sign. So I think, that's something that I like when I see that trend around. And on a very lighter note, again, ये LHS RHS पे मुझे याद आया कि I remember, I don't know which year, when was it, but in some exam I remember कि मैंने वो LHS RHS के ऊपर पूरी मेहनत की, लेकिन एंड में वो RHS LHS पे इक्वल आया नहीं. तो मैंने बोला यार, मैं मेहनत तो इतनी सारी कर ली, 2-3 पेज भर दिए मैंने इतना करके, तो मैंने सोचा एक काम करते हैं, देखते हैं क्या होता है,
लिख देते
लास्ट में
हैं.
लिख देते हैं LHS इक्वल, अरे 2 लाइन डाल के हेंस प्रूव्ड. देखते हैं क्या होता है. एंड द गुड न्यूज इज कि मुझे उसे पूरे नंबर भी मिल गए, क्योंकि उसने सारे उतना ही देखा कि इतनी मेहनत करके बंदे ने हेंस प्रूव्ड लिखा है, तो किया होगा कुछ ना कुछ.
Right. So a lot of organizations also are doing it. We are reaching there or not, but we define culture to acha hai. And yes, they should definitely get marks for the efforts that they have put
Absolutely.
in. Yeah.
Absolutely. Recognition of efforts is important. Now, the last question that I have in mind, because of the situation that we are in, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, or the endemic that we are moving towards, hopefully, आपको क्या लगता है, what has been the impact on the culture of an organization because of this remote working place, hybrid working place, then people coming to office? There is a lot of mix-up. Nobody knows exactly what's happening, but it seems hybrid is the way forward. We don't know yet. We'll see how things turn out in time. But do you think there is an impact on the culture in terms of involvement of people, bond of people in the organization, and how are you dealing with that?
I think it has changed for a reason, and it has changed for good. The term generalized, or the term that this is the culture of the organization, that has definitely, in a way, disappeared, or if not disappeared, the existence or visibility has definitely reduced. Benefits as on today are the culture itself has become more flexible. As I said,
Mm,
we are talking about individuals, we are talking about the uniqueness of the culture, which is driven by unique needs of the individuals. We are not saying हमारा process यही है, so this is what we will be doing. We will not be able to
mm,
deviate from. So policy says 30 days leave. किसी ने 2 दिन की और leave मांग ली for a very very valid reason. Today, at least HR would go back and see कर सकते हैं कि नहीं. They will check with the
mm,
manager, they will check with management, or they would take that call that it's okay. 2 days
mm,
exceptional. Somebody would ask for advance. Earlier, people used to say process ही नहीं है, policy ही नहीं है. We do
mm,
not give salary advance and forget about loan and all. System में ही नहीं है. Now
mm,
people would say, oh, what's the need? Acha, medical emergency hai, let me just check. They will check with managers. If they say, oh, we don't have any hang of it, हमें तो पता भी नहीं है, they would go back to management and they would justify that, look at the scenario, look at the need of the individual. We have to do it. And sometimes we say that, we are, in a way, we are talking about processes. आप किसी को पैसे दे रहे हो, किसी को leave दे रहे हो, culture कहाँ से आया? But the
mm,
truth is, that's defining the culture. That's defining the
mm,
culture for that
बिल्कुल.
individual, where you are heard, where you are cared, where you are valued. And especially because of COVID, I have seen that extensively being covered and considered with respect to people.
Mm,
We have accepted the fact that if we take care of people, probably most of the things will be um, aligned and they will fall in place.
mm,
So I would say that's the major change that I have seen, Prashant, because of COVID. And when we talk about leadership, when we talk about business enablers, when we talk about managers or the individuals, the 4 layers we've been talking about, I have seen immense change at all these levels. The training that we were talking about, the junior or the last part of the pyramid, even they are conscious about the words they use. They are
mm,
more particular about the deliverables. They also understand their responsibility, and they also have become part of the entire system. So that's the change, and that's the reason, probably, if culture is not changing every day, it's evolving for better future in every organization. I have not at least heard where anybody is saying पोस्ट कोविड जो है लोगों ने सुनना ही बंद कर दिया. एनीबडी
Mm.
एंड एवरीबडी यू विल इंटरेक्ट विद, they would say that at least they listen to us. The people power has expanded exponentially, and that's the good part, and that will definitely build a best or a better culture.
Absolutely. And जैसा आपने rightly कहा, I think the compassion element in this times of COVID has gone really high. People have connected human to human because a lot of conversations which were only purely work related before don't happen first. Now the conversation is more that how are you doing, how's everybody in family, is your health okay, is everybody all right. And I have seen leaders connect with people at a very individual level, which means they know exactly what's happening in Prashant's life. It's not a general conversation about,
Yeah,
they know exactly how are you, how is your daughter, is everything all right, you told me that your mother was not well, how. So there is an effort that I see leaders being making and trying their best to connect at an individual level. I think that is bringing in an element of connect जो आप कह रहे हैं ना. I think वो compassion, वो connect at a human level हो रहा है, and people have come at the forefront of business now. And I think every business has accepted कि it's people that is the real power of their business. कि pandemic आए ना आए, फिर से आए नहीं आए, if they have their people element intact, if people are connected with each other and they feel for the organization, we will get through any rough times that come our way. I think that's a very big learning that this pandemic has brought forward, and I hope
so true.
we keep that learning as permanent and make that a new way of being as an organization, being as people, and not let it fade away as the pandemic fades away, because that's a very
Absolutely.
important learning that's come out of it. So great. I think, very interesting conversations, Dr. Ankita, that we had today. Very interesting points that you brought forward. I'm sure everybody who's listening now or will listen to the recording, go back to this conversation and listen to the acronym culture that she spoke about, listen to the lead parameters that she spoke about, and also listen to the entire, if you see the entire thread that is covering this entire conversation, holding it together, is flexibility, is adaptability, is engagement, and is awareness. Without these elements, I don't think leadership is possible. I don't think building a culture of an organization is possible. And one thought that again is very prominent in the conversation is that culture is very fluid and it's very specific to individuals. You cannot generalize it. So please be individual focused and see if all your people are experiencing the culture in the same way. So, with that thought, Dr. Ankita, is there anything else that you would like to say to close today's show?
No, I think it was lovely. Thanks to you for reviving everything. Actually, I could relive every word, and probably I'll be more conscious today onwards, little more. Four aspects you added. I would just add one more, that staying human is very important. So, processes and everything will fall in place if we start treating each other more as humans. कहीं पे तो
Absolutely.
बोला गया था, जैसे आप दूसरों को चाहते हो, जैसे आप चाहते हो कि लोग आपसे बिहेव करें, वैसे ही आप दूसरों से बिहेव करना शुरू कर दो,
बिल्कुल,
तो लाइफ बिकम्स ईजियर. एंड आई थिंक दैट विल बी द सिंपलेस्ट वे टू डिफाइन अ ग्रेट कल्चर फॉर योर सेल्फ एंड फॉर अदर्स अराउंड यू. सो जब भी हम नेक्स्ट टाइम किसी से बात करें या किसी को जज करने की कोशिश करें, just imagine, assume that what if you were there, how you would have
बिल्कुल.
reacted. And once we do that, I think we are set.
Bilkul, bilkul. A very beautiful thought to end today's conversation. So, Dr. Ankita, thank you so much for your time. You have a wonderful day and a great weekend ahead. हम फिर से कभी ज़रूर फिर से बात करेंगे और डिटेल्स में जाएंगे इन चीज़ों के बारे में. And
Absolutely.
everybody in the audience, thank you so much for your time on every weekend that you give me. Thank you so much for that. And I will bring forward another amazing guest to you next Saturday, and we'll have more conversations about leadership, about culture, and about people. With that promise, you take care. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next Saturday. Goodbye. Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
Prashant.
Ankita. Goodbye.
Thanks, Prashant.